Siri's been the same assistant for 11 years. Not a little bit the same, fundamentally the same. You ask it a simple question, it understands the words you said, and it either gives you a factual answer or opens an app. That's it. But here's what most people don't realize. Siri has seen less real improvement than almost every other major AI system on the planet. Meanwhile, ChatGPT learned to reason. Google's Gemini learned to understand context across entire conversations. Even smaller AI assistants are doing things Siri still can't do. Apple knows this is a problem, and they're about to fix it in a way that could fundamentally change how you interact with your devices. At WWDC 2026, that's Apple's annual developer conference happening this week, the company is unveiling a completely reimagined Siri that's built on a new foundation. This isn't a cosmetic update. We're talking about a voice assistant that understands context the way humans actually communicate, that can handle multi-step tasks without you spelling everything out, and that learns the way you personally use your devices. The change is so significant that Apple's entire Apple Intelligence strategy hinges on it. This is the moment where Siri stops being the punchline and becomes genuinely competitive with what everyone else has already shipped. And if Apple pulls this off, it could reshape how billions of people control their devices. Let's rewind. When Siri launched in 2011, it was genuinely revolutionary. Apple acquired a company called Siri Inc., trained it heavily, and dropped it on the iPhone 4s as the first mainstream voice assistant in anyone's pocket. For about 3 years, Siri was the only serious player in the game. Then everything changed. Google built Google Assistant and made it understand your photos, your calendar, and your habits. Amazon shipped Alexa and made it the center of the smart home. Even Microsoft pushed Cortana hard on Windows devices, but Apple kept Siri mostly static. They added voice control features, sure. They made it faster in some cases, but the core engine, the actual intelligence underneath, didn't really evolve the way the others did. By 2024, Siri was the assistant people made fun of. Reddit threads would stack up with stories of Siri misunderstanding simple requests or being unable to do things that Alexa or Google Assistant handled easily. And Apple users noticed. Surveys showed satisfaction with Siri was dropping year after year. Meanwhile, OpenAI released ChatGPT and showed the world what modern large language models could actually do: understand nuance, follow complex reasoning, engage in real conversation. Apple saw all of this. They knew they were behind, so they've been quietly rebuilding Siri from the ground up for the past 18 months, and WWDC 2026 is when they finally show the world what they've built. But here's where the actual story gets interesting. The new Siri isn't running on the old system anymore. Apple's built it on what they are calling a multimodal on-device foundation model. Translation: Siri now understands text, voice, images, and video all at the same time, and it does most of this processing right on your phone instead of sending everything to Apple's servers. This is huge for 2 reasons. First, privacy. If your personal requests are being understood locally on your device, Apple doesn't need to log them to remote servers. You get the power of a modern AI without giving up your data. Second, speed. No network delay, no waiting for cloud response. Siri answers you instantly because it's thinking on the device itself. The second big change is contextual memory. The old Siri had no memory between requests. You'd ask it something, it'd answer, and the next time you talked to it, it had zero idea what you'd previously discussed. The new version understands ongoing context. It remembers what you were just doing, what you care about, what time of day it is, what app you're in. You can say, "Remind me about this later," while reading an email, and Siri understands this means the email you're currently looking at. The third change is reasoning. Modern Siri can break down multi-step tasks. Instead of saying, "Call my wife at home," you can say, "Text my wife to pick up milk on the way home and remind me when she leaves the house." That's 3 operations that require understanding intent, context, and device capabilities. Old Siri would give up. New Siri will actually execute it. Here's what most coverage misses entirely. Apple Intelligence isn't just about Siri. It's the entire suite of AI capabilities that Apple's embedding across your iPhone, iPad, and Mac. Think of Siri as the voice and conversational interface, but Apple Intelligence is the engine powering everything. Here are the specific examples Apple's showing off at WWDC. Writing tools. This is built into every app that has text fields. You highlight text and ask for it to be rewritten in a professional tone, or summarized, or made more casual. You're not copying and pasting into ChatGPT anymore. It's native to your device. Intelligent photos. Your photo library becomes searchable in ways that feel like magic. You can search by anything in the image, even things Apple's system has never seen before. You ask for photos of my dog jumping, and it finds them, because it understands spatial and action concepts. Smart notification summaries. Your phone groups notifications and creates brief summaries so you're not drowning in alerts. Mail and messages get smarter about understanding which emails actually need your attention right now. Proactive intelligence. Here's where it gets eerie. Your devices learn patterns about how you work. If you always text someone at 7 p.m. on Wednesday evenings, your phone surfaces that contact when it's approaching 7 p.m. on Wednesday. These aren't separate features you turn on. They're woven throughout the operating system, and most of them work without sending your data to Apple's servers. But here's the thing that changes the calculus entirely. This is where Apple's making a bold bet. Every other major AI company, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, has decided that cloud processing is necessary. They want your data on their servers because that's where the most powerful models run. It's where they can do the most sophisticated analysis. It's also where they can build the largest training datasets. Apple's taking the opposite approach with Apple Intelligence. As much as possible, everything runs on your phone. The problem is, your iPhone has way less computing power than a data center. So how do you make cutting-edge AI features run locally? You make smaller, more efficient models. Apple's trained specialized versions of large language models specifically for on-device processing. They are smaller than the public versions, but they are still incredibly capable. For the most complex requests that genuinely need server processing, Apple's developed something called private cloud compute. Here's how it works. Your request is encrypted on your device, sent to Apple's servers, processed there, and then deleted immediately. Apple's servers don't store the request, don't log it, and don't use it for training. From Apple's perspective, each request is fundamentally invisible. The company's betting that this middle ground, local processing for the common stuff, encrypted cloud processing for the hard stuff, zero data retention in either case, is what people actually want. And it's a stark contrast to how Google, OpenAI, and Microsoft handle the same problem. But here's where Apple's running into resistance. Apple's announced something else at WWDC that's already causing problems. They're integrating OpenAI's ChatGPT into Siri. When a request is too complex for Apple's on-device model to handle, Siri asks for your permission and sends the request to ChatGPT. You stay in the Siri interface, but the heavy lifting happens in OpenAI's system. This solves a real problem. Apple Intelligence now has access to the most powerful language model on the planet. But it opens a door that Apple has spent 2 decades trying to keep closed. If you opt into ChatGPT integration, OpenAI sees your request. They don't see your identity, Apple strips that out, but they see the content of what you're asking. That's a fundamental change in how Apple presents itself to users. The company has built its brand on privacy. What happens on your iPhone stays on your iPhone. That slogan has been everywhere. Now they are saying, unless it's complicated, then we are sending it to OpenAI. In the European Union, regulators are already questioning whether users understand what they are consenting to. In the United States, privacy advocates are asking whether Apple's stripping of identity data is actually enough. And there's a competitive question too. By integrating ChatGPT, Apple is essentially admitting that their own models aren't sufficient. They need OpenAI's help. That's a power dynamic change that matters. But here's the thing nobody's thinking about. If you're an Apple user, you don't need to do anything right now. These features are shipping in iOS 18.1, Mac OS 15.1, and iPadOS 18.1, which arrive this fall. They'll be automatic for anyone on a recent device. But here's what you should do to prepare. First, make sure you're running the current version of your operating system. Apple Intelligence requires certain hardware, specifically devices with their latest chips. The iPhone 16 Pro and regular iPhone 16 both qualify. If you have an iPhone 15 Pro or older, you won't get these features immediately, though Apple's suggested they're exploring a way to bring them to older devices. Same goes for Mac. You need an Apple Silicon Mac to run the full suite. You can check your device in Settings, go to General, then About, and look for the chip name. If it says M1, M2, M3 or later, you're good. Second, think about your privacy preferences now. When Apple Intelligence launches, you'll see a setup screen. You'll choose whether to enable on-device processing. You should, because it's faster and private. You'll choose whether to allow private cloud compute for complex requests, also recommended, because it's still encrypted. And you'll choose whether to allow ChatGPT integration. That's personal. Some people love having access to the most powerful model. Others prefer Apple's on-device system exclusively. There's no wrong answer, just be intentional about it. Third, watch Apple's WWDC videos when they go live. The company will release deep technical talks about how Apple Intelligence works, what's private and what's not, and how to optimize settings for your workflow. These are the most authoritative resources you'll find. And here's what you should watch for next. WWDC 2026 is the moment Apple signals that they're no longer playing catch-up. They're making a fundamentally different bet than Google, Microsoft, and Amazon. Those companies have built their AI strategy around cloud computing, data collection, and training larger models. Apple's saying the future is smaller, smarter models that live on your device, understand your context, and respect your privacy. Is that strategy going to work? We're about to find out. The real test comes this fall when these features hit 1 billion devices. If Siri actually becomes helpful, if it starts understanding context and handling complex requests the way the marketing promises, then Apple's pivot is real. If it still struggles with the basics, then nothing changes. But here's what matters for you right now. Apple Intelligence isn't science fiction. It's shipping in a few months. It's going to reshape how your device works. And whether you love it or hate it, it's going to influence how every other tech company thinks about AI for the next 5 years. The question everyone's asking is whether on-device AI can actually compete with cloud-based systems. Apple thinks it can. Google's not so sure. Microsoft's hedging their bets. And OpenAI's watching to see how much power they actually have in Apple's ecosystem. This is the beginning of a completely different approach to consumer AI, and WWDC 2026 just made it real. Follow for daily AI news to catch everything as it unfolds.